us right now. Joining us on the West Shore Hotline, Sabres GM Kevyn Adams in advance of this final week of the regular season. Kevin, thanks as always for your time.
No problem. How you guys doing?
Okay. I would think you can certainly, I hope you do, tell me if you think I'm wrong. The end of the season like this, there would be a few different feelings, like maybe certainly disappointment, maybe exhaustion a little bit, and maybe also a little bit of eagerness to get to work on the off season. How do you look at it?
Yeah, it's probably all the above, to be honest. Very disappointing the way this season played out. I fully expected us to be right there in a playoff spot or competing, and feel that we should have been based on, the talent on our roster. So it's disappointing. The exhausted part's probably right because, it takes a toll, I'm not just on me, but everybody in the fan base and everybody in this town when the team isn't performing at the level that, is expected. So in saying that, you have to look in the mirror, and I do that. I start with myself and what do we need to do? What do I need to do? And how do we fix some of the issues that need to be fixed, and how do we make the team better to be prepared for next season to not be in this spot?
I know you went pretty long on this about a month and a half ago at the deadline with some reporters in Florida, looking at, being reflective about what went wrong, when did it take the wrong turn or whatever. Now we're that much closer to the end. You guys were still alive at that time, and now you, of course, have been eliminated now. When you think about it, have any of your thoughts changed from 6 weeks or so ago to now as to what you could have done? Where did it all sort of unravel for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, and some of this will be taking a deeper dive, in the off season. But you start with the 13-game winless streak. It's really tough to recover from and chase points the rest of the way. And what was interesting though, and I've thought a lot about this, should I have done something during that stretch to try to jumpstart our team? Could I have made a trade? Could I have maybe, do something in Rochester? And, that's where, when I say I look in the mirror first, I'll take responsibility. What was interesting when I went back and looked at the 13 games, within a couple little tiny percentage points, but basically we were plus or even in 6 of those 13 games, in terms of expected goals. So you're talking about a stretch where, 7 of them we didn't, probably on paper should have lost, and 6 of them, right, either overtime or wins. And, and end up where we ended up was disappointing. When I'm looking at that stretch, there was a lot of games early in the 13 that we played pretty well. We just found ways to lose. And so that's where I guess then as the streak went on, kind of you get into towards, 8, 9, 10, 12 games, all of a sudden it's just the mountain got bigger and bigger to climb, and that's the frustrating part. But it wasn't like the team was just terrible during all of those games.
Right.
So that's the hard part. But yeah, if I'm being honest, I thought we would probably have come out of that. We had games where we were up and we found ways to lose, and we were, you guys know, it was not like something I've ever experienced before. So it was frustrating, but yeah, for sure I would have done it differently. Maybe I would have made a change, just even if it was calling up a player, do something just to change the dynamic of the group up a little.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, don't we know it, Bulldog? That's easy to say. Do something.
Right.
Right? But I think of 2 games in that stretch. I think it's Colorado and Detroit. 2 home games where you had leads. You had 4-0 on the Avs. You had
5-3 in the
late
third. Yeah.
on Detroit. And then after that, what do you think maybe, as you say you've thought about this a lot, it's certainly like the cluster of the season where it got away. Do you feel like the mental side of things really did work on guys there because of how like you kind of said already, the losses pile up and maybe a hockey player just kind of doesn't know what to do?
Yeah, I think yes, I do think that happens, and it can almost become this how do we get out of this? And you start squeezing the stick. But, I think what the maturity level needs to improve on is that if you can separate the emotion of it and say, okay, we played really well and we did all the right things. We didn't win the hockey game, but if we continue to play like that, we're going to win. And we probably weren't mature enough during that time to be able to handle that type of mentality. And then we started maybe we started cheating a little bit more. We're trying to outscore teams instead of play the right way. Obviously, Darlene got hurt during that. There was just a lot of factors in there. I know the guys care, and maybe sometimes you got to separate from the emotion. It's really hard because you want to focus on the process and you want to do things the right way to set yourself up to win. But ultimately, every night you either win or you lose, and that's the results matter. So it's easier said than done. But I think that's a step that if we could learn as a team to be a little bit more mature, I think is really important.
With Kevyn Adams here on WGR, as far as the future goes, Kevin, can you say now whether Lindy Ruff will be back?
Yep, Lindy will be back, and I just think that Lindy is he's got so much experience, and he has built up. I think it takes time, for coaches just to learn personalities and what makes players tick and which buttons to push, and I think he's in a good spot there with our group. And I know Lindy is frustrated. He'll have his own self reflection and evaluation on what he thinks he could have done better, and we'll be having a lot of those conversations, the two of us, also sitting down with Terry and going through everything. But no, I fully expect Lindy to be better in the areas that he thinks he could be better in, and make sure we're in a different spot next year.
I want to, if I may, add to why I wanted to ask you that. I mean, one, I guess it has to be fair when the team is out of the playoffs. What's the future of the coach? That would happen anywhere. But I'm thinking about before the season, and I wondered, meeting him as he returned, and there was that event at the arena where he talked about at first he wasn't sure he wanted to do it. I wondered about his energy level. Like, if you told us he wasn't back, I would think maybe that would have been his decision, just based on how he sounded at the beginning of the year. How have you found that to be? Was that all just sort of a misread, or did that change over the course of the year? Like, is he, I would think you're going to say yes, but like, does he have the energy for another push at this?
Well, yeah, there's no question. I mean, I guess if after game 82 he told me he was exhausted, there's different, but like he has a burning desire to make sure the Buffalo Sabres become a successful team. This is just as much as personal it is with me in this job, and growing up here and being from Western New York, it's extremely personal for Lindy too, because he spent such a big chunk of his professional career, with the Buffalo Sabres. So he wants nothing more than to get this thing going the right direction, and I believe he's. For me, he's as energetic and passionate about the game as he was when I coached with him, over 10 years ago. So I have no concern on that.
Recognizing that the season is not completely over yet, what sort of mindset will you have going into the offseason to avoid what would become a 15th consecutive season out of the playoffs, Kevin? Like, you made a significant trade at the deadline, moving Cousins for Norris and Docker, and Norris has only been able to play 3 games. I'd like to get some update on him if time allows here, but what do you think is called for here? Like, are there multiple big moves to be made? Is it patience because we still got young guys? Like, where do you think the hockey department will be pointed when we get to June and July?
Well, I think it starts with you have to ask the right questions and be honest with the answers first to truly diagnose what the issues were and how do we fix them? I mean, I've said to you guys before, we will do anything and everything to make this team better, whether is that making changes, trading players, whatever that means, that we will do. But you don't just do them to do them. They have to make sense, And I think when I look at our season, there's some really obvious things that jump out to me, and I'll go deeper into this, certainly when I meet with Terry after the season and kind of set our, how we go from here into the off season. But we have to improve defensively. We just have to be better defensively, and that doesn't just mean the defensemen. That just means overall the way we play. And that ties right into goaltending. It's easy to look at the goaltending and say, okay, we need to do better. And yeah, I think I think both our guys would be the first ones to say, we need to be better, but that's also tied into how we play in front of them. And defensively, I'm a big believer our special teams are just absolutely have not been good enough in terms of, think of the points in the standings if you get into a top 10 power play and penalty kill and what that can mean at the end of the day. So that's an area that, we'll really try to understand why we are where we are there. I do think we need to be overall harder to play against, and I would, classify as a big term, but just competitiveness, right? Like competitiveness there's so many layers underneath that, but that's puck battles, that's block shots, that's sticking up for your teammates at the right time. So, we've been good in pockets, but we need to be better. And probably the last thing that comes to mind, and, just in terms of, your question is, we got to get to the net. We got to make it harder on the other team's goalies. We got to get more. You just look at the league. You look at the way some of the teams play, and they get the puck to the point, and they got 2-3 guys in the goalie's face and crashing the neck and rebounds. We need more of that, and I think that's not a talent thing. That's just a mindset, and we need our players to buy into that. So those are the areas that right off the top of my head I can give you, and we'll take a deep dive and look. And if there's ways to improve in those areas, we're going to make changes to do it.
You mentioned goaltending there, and at this time last year, I think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was one of the stories of the season, a positive story. It looked like he'd broken through, got the contract extension, and this year's been, uneven enough that James Reimer was playing the majority of the games here running up to the end of the season here. And I think you know me well enough to know that I'm a former card-carrying member of the goalie union here with a goalie kid, so I'm sympathetic to the goalie and other things contributing to their struggles. But he hasn't had the year he had last year. If you just look at him singularly, what do you think went wrong for him, if that's not too sloppy a way to phrase it?
Yeah, it's a great question and a fair question. I think part of it, I'm not dodging the question with the answer, but part of it does tie into our defensive play in front of them. There's a correlation to that. You look at the top teams and how structured and disciplined they are in the way they play defensively. Winnipeg comes to mind, obviously, and goaltenders, and they have great goalie, but their goaltender numbers are good. And so, I think that's step one. And then step two is, there is a lot of variability year to year with goaltenders. There's very few guys that you can just say every year they're just put them up on the board, top 5 guys in the world. So you're going to have a little bit of that, especially with younger guys, and that UPL still is. So I still firmly believe UPL can be a top 15 goalie in this league. I have no doubt in my mind. Is there areas of his game to clean up a little bit and work on in the summer? For sure. But I think I have full confidence he'll do that. And then I think the other part is we need to be better in front of him, and I do think it goes hand in hand.
With Kevyn Adams, Bulldog mentioned Norris. Kevin, what's the deal? What is his outlook here? I'm guessing he's not playing this week. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, super disappointed. Mostly first of all, for him and our fans, because it would have been nice for him to be able to play, whatever many games that was after the trade deadline, and really kind of establish the player he is and what he can mean to this franchise and our fans to get excited about him. And obviously it didn't happen. We knew this, first of all, the trade or the injury is nothing to do with the shoulder, and what he'd been through in the past. This was an injury that he dealt with, that he had in Ottawa, that he missed some time. Admittedly said he probably tried to get back a little bit too early before the trade deadline. We knew about it, but as soon as he got here, and then the MRI was done, and he re-injured it, I think, in game 2 or 3 after he started playing. And it was, a 6 to 8 week timeline. So if we were a playoff team, I think he's right on the cusp of coming back. In fact, maybe right now, or if the playoffs were starting in a few days, potentially be in the lineup. So the good news is he's going to be, this was a soft tissue thing. This isn't something that needs surgery. He's going to be healthy. He'll have a good summer. And we have big expectations. And we would have made that trade anyways. This wasn't about just this stretch, but I do I am disappointed for him and the fans, like I said.
While we're on injuries, Owen Power, all we know is that it's at least somewhat serious. Do you have any more news to shed on exactly what happened to him and what kind of timeline? And is there concern that could bleed into training camp and the start of next regular season?
No concern there, but it does look like a fairly significant injury. He is going to New York City Thursday to get a second opinion. But this is it's a significant injury in the sense that he would definitely, if this was November, he'd be missing some time. What the question is now, guys, is does he have surgery? And then that could extend a little bit of his timeline. Or is this a situation where he can rehab and avoid surgery, which would potentially would get him back quicker? Now, based on the timeline, he should be back and fully 100% ready to go regardless. So it's not totally relevant for next season. It's more just about how to treat the injury, and that's why I say we'll know when I do my end of the season press conference. So I think on whatever day that is, Friday or Saturday, I'll have a better definitive answer on exactly the timeline and exactly how, the decision that's been made.
This is maybe, feel good and bad about it given the ultimate result for the team, but you did get another 2 world-class seasons out of Dahlin and Thompson here.
Yeah, we did. And, these are guys that are, I give credit to these guys where they're playing at an elite level night in and night out, and it's frustrating from a statistical standpoint to see the season that they've had, yet where we are in the standings. So that's something that I'm certainly going to talk to them about after the season and say how do we make sure we're not in this position. But no, it's been nice to see, and out of both those guys playing at the level that they are right now.
Another guy that's had a fantastic season and has played every game so far is Alex Tuch, and he's eligible for an extension when we get to July. Have there been any conversations, any early ideas about what that might look like for you?
No, we haven't had any of those conversations yet, but I think Alex is one of these guys that critically important to our team and plays in every situation, typically leads our forward group in minutes every night, and has played at a really, really high level this year. So those are conversations that I certainly will have, talk to him. You guys have heard me say this before. You always want to find out exactly where the player's at and what are they looking long term and all that, but he's been such an important player for us on and off the ice, so we certainly hope we have him a long time.
Kevin, thanks for your time today.